Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Walk and Talk Faith podcast. I'm Annie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason.
We're so glad that we're here. It's another week, another finished week, if you will, or completed week, but happy to be here. How are you, Jason?
I'm doing great. Just as I indicated last week, we got good news on the job front. I'm back to work this week.
Very nice.
It's keeping me busy as it ever did. I'm back with the same company, just on a consulting basis, hoping to parlay that back into a full-time job.
Yeah, work is work, right? And it's good that you're back in a familiar position. And
Oh yeah, they nobody in that department had a hand in me going, not even the boss. And everyone in that department, especially the boss, is happy that I'm back.
well, that's good.
So we just need that word to trickle its way up the chain to the higher ups so that we can try to negotiate me back into my position for full time.
I know that you guys talked recently about bearing each other's burdens and whatnot, and that was very similar to what I had to not deal with. I don't like to say deal, that I had to
I think that's a fair word.
go through or endure. Last week, a week ago, Wednesday, we got word from our family that my uncle, my mother, and my aunt's last living brother was very ill and had suffered some chest pains initially, and he was so stubborn, and the son-in-law finally talked him into, I'm going to take you. And then he finally said yes. So, my goodness. So he went in a week ago Wednesday. Initially, they thought it was just maybe a stroke, but they hooked him up to the EKG and did an EKG rather. And they found that he was actually in like having a distress at that very moment. And so they put him on a gurney and they wheeled him in the back and took him in, and come to find out that night he ended up suffering a massive heart attack. I won't go into the details, but he was in there for a week, 6 days initially on life support, and the family was just devastated. We had to break it to my mom and my aunt very, very gently. They're all elderly in their 80s-ish. And to break that kind of news to them in the way that we had to, trying to protect them and trying to make sure that they were surrounded by family. We thought that one of the best ways to do that was, they already know that he was taken into the hospital. Let's just go there. Let's just go visit, or, call it a visit. I know it was probably, in retrospect, probably like, I didn't want to say deceiving, but we wanted them to be able to hear directly from the doctor as to what it was that he suffered. So how best to tell them than directly from the doctor. So we took him to the hospital, and that's where they received the news. We kind of had to prepare them. We had to say, like, listen, before you walk in, this is what the state he's in, so on and so forth. So they were prepared, and nothing prepares you, to see your loved one literally on life support and non-responsive. It's just not a good scenario, and that's kind of what it was for us.
No, there's no easy way to do that.
Yeah, it was definitely, wow, it was so emotional, so hard to watch, the aunties, as we call them, the two sisters, kind of go through that, and trying to call out to him and talk to him. We kept saying, yes, he's going to hear you. He's going to hear you. Because we were unsure about his brain activity and everything else. So we just said, okay, just talk to him. Maybe, he'll have some sort of reaction. So it's 6 days of that. And let me just tell you that because that was what we had to deal with as a family, we had to kind of rally together as a family. We had to make sure that we, always stayed on top of with one another, with his updates and all that. There was just a lot of that going on for literally 6 days. And this is where we're going to talk about our topic. So our topic of today is called Overcoming Distractions. I have to tell you this. The reason why I want to say this was a distraction, or not, he was a distraction, but that was my focus. I wanted so much to focus on my uncle and my mom and my aunt and my family and my cousins. I wanted so much to do that, to be there for them. And I couldn't, because there was so much of everything else that I had to deal with.
Life's demands.
I had to worry about work. I had to worry about, like, do I have enough vacation time? Do I have this? Do I have that? So, oh my gosh, before I cry, I want to get into some of the Bible verses that that brings us to our topic. So for me, I want to talk about Luke chapter 10, verses 41 and 42. And it reads, Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better. And what did Mary do? Mary was the one that sat at Jesus' feet. He sat at Jesus' feet because she knew what the most important thing was Jesus. Because Jesus was only going to be there for that limited time, right? Or they didn't know that. They actually didn't know that, but Mary knew what was important. Mary knew that being at the foot of Jesus was important. She wanted to soak in everything that Jesus had to say. She wanted to be in the presence of Jesus. And Martha
Right.
was so busy with all the, all the things that were happening, making sure that she takes care of the
And what's
hosting.
important, one thing that's important to remember in that passage is that Martha wasn't doing something sinful. She was
No.
simply so busy serving that she was missing spending her time with Jesus.
Yeah, but let me get to my point. So my point is this. I wanted so much to be there in the presence. I work for a church, right? I work for a church. I serve. I do all these things, and everybody, the family knows. Oh, Annie's a Christian. Annie knows, right? And I'm here with the family, and I couldn't even offer a word of comfort, a word of anything, because I was so worried about everything else. I was worried about work. I was in a hotel room one of the nights and taking care of my aunties and making sure that they can get it in and out of the bathroom okay without slipping and falling, right? That's one thing. I'm not saying that was a distraction. I'm just saying that's the business at hand. I needed to be there for them. But and I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I really am not. So hear me when I say that I had to get up early in the morning because I had to take care of work. So I got up early in the morning to take care of some of that while the aunties were still sleeping. And then, of course, I'm on the phone, I'm doing work, and they're waking up. So I'm like, gosh, okay. So I tried to do as much as I could, and I finished in that time frame, in that like 2-3 hour time frame that I had to do work. And then it was trying to be able to be there again for them. But that was my thing. It's like I wanted to be there for them. The most important thing was to be there for them, and the most important thing was to be there for my cousin. That I wanted to do that I felt like was important. I was being distracted. I was being pulled to go do other things. And mind you, my cousins, all stepped in, and everybody shared the load. But I'm just saying that to me, it felt like there was so many distractions that I could not grieve. I could not be where I wanted to be. I could not. He hadn't even passed yet, and I could not even be focused on what I wanted to, on what I felt like was the most important thing, was just to be there for my family. Yes, all the things needed to get done. People still needed to eat and all that. So it's a whole thing. But my uncle did pass on Wednesday, this past Wednesday at 11 o'clock a.m. And then when I finally, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to take the bulk of this conversation, but when I finally did get to sit down, I don't even remember, honestly, if I've journaled much that week, this whole week. I think I did. I don't know, because everything's kind of a blur. But when I finally did get to sit down and speak to God and ask him, like, do you have a word for me, God? And he finally gave me one, or maybe I just was still enough to hear it. But when I sent this to my cousin, I needed her to hear what was said to me, what God was saying to me. And it was about this word. It was a pastor that spoke on the word Yahweh, spelled YHWH. Okay, it's Greek, I think, or Arabic. Somebody correct me, but the word is Yahweh. And what it was saying is that, because it doesn't have any vowels, it's all literally just consonants, right?
It's
YHWH.
actually Hebrew, and
Hebrew.
yeah,
Thank you.
Hebrew didn't have vowels. Hebrew was all consonants. That's
Right.
why it's spelled that way.
So the sound of Yahweh is literally a breath. That's the sound of this word Yahweh. So this pastor was talking about, you come in, when we're babies and when we're infants, we come into the world with our first breath, Yahweh. And when we leave this earth, we leave with the word Yahweh. So my uncle, when we watched him take his two last breaths, that's what I saw. And to me, that was him saying, God, I'm coming. And God save me. So that to me was just all the comfort I needed. And I couldn't share it at the time because it was such a, such a moment where we were all just grieving in our own different ways, crying and consoling each other, holding one another, right? So the very next day is when I shared that with my cousin, and her reply back to me was, "Amen. What a good word. Thank you." So it gave me comfort knowing that, yes, and I had led my uncle a year ago, I want to say, into a prayer where he accepted the Lord. So I knew with confidence that he was saved. But it gave me much more comfort knowing that his last words were the words spoken, God. So yeah, that was my this Bible verse talks about what I experienced as my distraction for the week, and where I wanted to be initially was there with my family. I couldn't because I felt I was being pulled in every which way. But I don't know, I feel like God was just trying to slow me down, and I think he was letting me know that it's okay. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be the voice of God or the voice of reason or whatever in this given moment, because right now everybody was dealing with their own grief, and I think that was important for everybody to kind of process on their own. So whether we share this word with them or not, or whether my cousin decides to share this word with the rest of the family, I don't know, but it was my word that God gave to me that I gave to my cousin. So
Yeah, and that was a genuine struggle on your part.
yeah.
And it seems like that always happens when you have an ailing family member. When you're in a situation like that where someone is coming up on their last breaths, that everybody is getting pulled in so many directions. Everybody feels this is a part of life. It is very, very difficult. And knowing you as well as I do, Annie, I know you handled it with aplomb.
Yeah.
I know it wore you all the way out too.
Yeah. Oh my
It
goodness.
did.
It did.
And I'm so grateful I haven't had that type of struggle recently.
Mhm.
I think it's not very far around the corner with the way my mother's health is diminishing.
Right.
But distractions can be a very frustrating thing when you have a focus in life. And this job that I love, that I'm going back to now, it's a very demanding job, and it is endless distractions. Not on the same level as dealing with an ailing family member,
Mm.
but it does take me away from, say, for example, school is starting right now, and I've got to get my kids re-registered for school, and I got to get their new clothes for school. There's constantly things like that. And the most important thing is that we not let these distractions take our eye off that most important prize, which is Christ.
Right.
And the verse that I really like that when we were going through verses a little while ago was Colossians 3 verse 2. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. And that's very important. That is less about not getting distracted as it is just setting your priorities.
Yeah.
And our priority always needs to be Christ.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's so easy to let other things kind of, slip in and not only distract you, but man, it's, if we're not careful, we can also become the problem. We can also become, the issue. And that reminds me of Romans 12 verse 2, where it reads, and this is talking about guarding against worldly noise. It says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." It was so easy to go back and talk about, like, well, if only this, if only that. We've been telling him, not to smoke. There's a lot of that. There's always going to be a lot of the not back talk. I don't want to say that anybody's talking back, but just a lot of the retro talk.
Hindsight.
Yeah, in hindsight and in retrospect, the things that were either said or I should have, it's easy to fall into that. But I think that's also another thing that God's telling us to do, is by renewing of your minds, is just to stay focused at what's currently at hand. There's no use. You're not going to gain a day of life if you talk about, things that happened in the past. You're obviously
Could have,
not
would
gonna.
have, should have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's easy to fall into that hearsay, he said, she said kind of thing, and I didn't want to have to do that. So there was times where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna like go over here and check on this person. Oh, oh, I'm gonna go see how my aunt's doing. It's easy to, get caught up in those types of talk. And I think as Christians, that's something that we have to be really careful, because even prayer, when people say they need prayer, I'm careful to share prayer because or prayer requests. And this of me, and we did it quite a few times in our Bible study channels, right? Our Bible study prayer request channel, where we only share it if we get permission from the person. But even then, you want to be careful, right? Your prayer request shouldn't be like, a form of gossip. Your prayer should be sincere and making sure that you take care of the prayer need, and it doesn't have to be any farther than that. Does that make sense? So try not to be conformed to the patterns of this world, to the gossips of this world, or the talking and, whatever. So, just stay focused. The whole idea is to stay focused, right? So the whole thing about distraction is taking your focus away from what is truly at hand. And as you said, Jason, renewing of your mind and staying steadfast on the Lord is our number one priority. So yeah, absolutely.
All right. Good talk this week. I think that those 3 verses that we discussed are very good for keeping your mind focused and dealing with the distractions. That's kind of what we're trying to discuss this week. Comments below. We love to hear from our audience. It's so valuable to us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Help me with this, Annie. I'm not remembering everything now.
Well, I also...
You got me emotional.
It's okay. I also want to add this. For those of you who are grieving a loss like I did, just know you guys don't have to go through it alone. Okay. So I wish I was there with you, and I wish I could offer just a piece of not advice, but just, I wish I could offer just my deepest, well, I do offer my deepest condolences if you have gone through a loss. So just know that you don't have to go through any of this alone. So there are other people. There's us. There's other people that you could reach out to. You could reach out to your pastors, your small groups. They're there for a reason, right? So if you're not already in a small group, go find a small group. If you don't already have a church to attend, go find a church. But we're hoping that
all churches have those kind of groups.
Yeah.
And what Annie's referring to as small groups is the small intimate groups that get together in these large congregations like hers is. My congregation is pretty small, but we have women's ministry, we have youth ministry, we have men's ministry, we have all these types of groups that get together, and there's going to be there's groups like that in every congregation. So go find them. That's what they're there for, is to support each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yes, please know that you don't have to go through grief alone. Grief is a very heavy burden to take on yourself, but definitely know that there are people out there, including us, that can be here for you or be there for you. So thank you, Jason, for that. But yes,
if you'd like to reach out to us, what's the email, Annie?
It is walkandtalkfaith@gmail.com. walkandtalkfaith@gmail.com. But yes, everybody, thank you all so much for sticking around and for following us. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that anytime we upload a video, you all will be notified. But thank you very much for just being here for us. And we look forward to getting your responses, your emails, and just let us know if there's anything that you have questions about, or, we'd love to hear on subjects that you'd like us to talk about. But definitely do reach out and do comment. And don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, you guys, take care. Thanks so much for hanging out and for checking us out every single week. Oh, and by the way, we also have devotionals. If you don't already know that we have devotionals, and we upload those also weekly. All right, you guys, thank you for joining. Thank you for hanging out. And don't forget, God is on the air.
So are we.
Bye, everyone.